Hello, everybody out there in YouTube and podcast land. We are glad that you are back for yet another episode of Different Strings, a guitar adjacent podcast. Tonight, resistance and resonance, unraveling change in the world of guitarists. My name is Wes. This is my friend Andrew. Andrew, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody.
And this is a topic that Andrew and I have talked about a lot, about why and how guitar players either reject or embrace change. Are we infuriatingly traditionalist, or are we avant-garde on the cutting, bleeding edge of guitar technology? Or, as in most things in life, are a few of us at either extreme and most of us are in the middle, wondering what all the hue and cry is about? Before we get going, Andrew's going to tell you how to find us on the internet.
You can find us on the internet at www.differentstringspodcast.com. Hit us up.
What are they going to find on that website, Andrew?
Probably a bunch of bitching and whining about the good old days.
100%.
Yeah. They're going to find some blog posts. We're going to do some gear reviews. We're going to share horror stories. We're going to share success stories. And we're going to tell you a little bit about ourselves and why you should even give a shit about what we have to say.
That's right. And you'll be able to find all of our social media links, where we hope that you will join in the conversation and participate with your comments and your questions that we'll get to from time to time. And especially if you come up with ideas for topics that you'd like to see us address, because we're open to that. We're open to a lot of things, folks. All you got to do is ask.
I feel another edit point coming.
But tonight we're going to come up. I think I came up with this opening act question, Andrew. And I was inspired by and you correct me if I'm wrong. Don't ever let me get away with lying about stuff.
Okay.
Credit where credit's due, right?
Sure.
The question, if I remember correctly, was inspired by the topic, because I like to think that I'm a little tech forward when it comes to guitar, but I don't know. I'm not sure. We're going to explore that tonight and find out. So my question was, what new concept, let's call it music related, not necessarily guitar, but what new concept did you just immediately accept without question and jump into head first?
Okay. I like it. Sticking with the theme of the episode. And for me, 100% digital modelers.
So like the, man, I forget the name of the thing that you've got that looks like a computer instead of an amplifier.
Yeah, that's a Kemper Profiler.
Kemper, thank you. Kemper Profiler. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it looks like a computer, not an amplifier, right? And the day Line 6 came out with it was not the pod, but the amplifier. I can't remember the name of their first amplifier, not the Axis, but the one that came. Something tone, flex tone.
There you go.
I was one of the first flex tone buyers. I was one of the first pod buyers. So I adopted this for a couple of reasons. I mean, it was amazing what they were promising you, virtual closet full of classic guitar amplifiers in one.
A big closet too.
Yeah. And all like the classic amps that you couldn't afford. Even back then, they were expensive. Your JCMs, your JTMs, all the classic Fenders, your Vox AC30s, even the high watt models of these classic amplifiers, all in one tight little digital package. Lightweight. And, usually they came with 1 or 2 12s, but the whole thing was just super light. I was an apartment dweller with a bad back living on the 3rd floor. This thing was a no-brainer.
Elevator?
No.
Oh.
No.
What is this, the Stone Age?
Exactly. This is right when Tracy and I first met, too, and she lived on a 3rd floor apartment. And, of course, being a musician, I glommed onto her and moved in with her.
Right, because as a guitar player, if you don't have a girlfriend, you're homeless.
Correct. That was me. So, digital modelers, no-brainer. Now, the promise, they didn't quite deliver. Was it good? Yes. Was it everything you could hope for and more? I'd argue it was good enough. But the flex tone was, especially the 112, didn't sound great at high volume. Recording it was it was okay. It wasn't going to fool anybody. But I mean, that was a very long time ago. Think
Yeah.
about where we are now. And I would say digital amps are probably becoming, plugins included, are becoming almost the norm, mostly again out of necessity because cost of tubes and availability. And who wants to pick up an 85-pound tube amp when you can pick up a 25-pound digital modeler?
You're triggering me.
So the Kemper, on the other hand, sounded way better live
Yeah.
than the Line 6 ever did. And in this, in studio settings when I was recording, there was virtually no difference. Just amazing. Haven't given up tube amps, still love them. They're definitely their own thing.
Yeah.
But out of the gate, I've seems like that digital modeling thing was like I jumped right on. What about you? What was
The-
the
well, let me ask you a question real quick before
okay?
we move on to mine. The Kemper, do you plug a speaker cabinet straight into the back of it, or do you have to run it into a power amp first?
Kemper makes both a powered and unpowered version.
Okay.
So yeah, you can power the powered Kemper. You can plug straight into a speaker cabinet, and they even make their own speaker cabinet. The
Yeah,
un
they want to optimize it for
Yeah,
the application.
yeah. Now the unpowered Kemper, they recommend one of those what they call FRFR, flat response full range speakers. Like
Right.
you can run them straight into a PA, or if you're going to run them into a speaker cabinet, now there's companies like Friedman, Line 6. There's another one. There is another one. Mission Engineering. They all make, and there's others. They make specialized one or
For
two
speakers.
12 cabinets specifically for use with your digital modelers. Yeah. So
Gotcha.
the
Okay, cool.
technology is getting way better and they sound way better. So yeah.
Yeah, for me, the technology that I jumped right onto was recording technology when they first came out with 4-track recorders that used cassette tapes. That was my jam. I thought that was the greatest thing since Betty White, to tell you the honest truth, right? Because Betty White was invented before sliced bread. I don't know if
Oh,
you knew that.
wow. Spitting facts. No, I did not know that.
Yeah. So sliced bread is in fact the best thing since Betty White. And this was the 4-track cassette based 4-track recorder was the best thing as far as I'm concerned since Betty White. And I had a relatively good one relatively early on. I was pretty stoked about the idea of being able to Beatles my own music, if that makes sense, where you
Beatles
record
as a verb.
Beatles. Yes, I Beatles
Every
my
time you
own.
use Beatles as a verb, you have to pay Paul McCartney $300.
Yes, no doubt. What I would do is I would record 4 tracks,
Mm-hmm.
bounce it down in stereo to a
Mm.
regular tape recorder, put that in the 4-track, record 2 more tracks, bounce it down, 2 more tracks, bounce it down. And of course, you lose quality as you go. But I got very good at putting way too much treble in the earliest tracks
Oh my,
and tweaking my tone so that by
wow.
the time I got down to the last mix, it didn't sound as quite as bounced. I mean, I just loved that idea. And then pair that with a programmable drum machine. I mean, it sounded digital. There's no doubt about that. It sounded like some dude playing over a drum machine. But it allowed me to dive right into experimenting with songwriting and arrangement and really established this long-term love affair that I've had with recording music. It's
Yeah, and I
still
kind
one
of
of
want
my
to,
favorite things to do.
yeah, I kind of want to take a minute to, you said like, of course, the quality of the recording would degrade over time. You said that like everyone knows it, but I think let's take a minute to like explain what it is you were really doing and what was actually happening because we've been living in a digital age for quite some time, and I'm not sure everyone is necessarily going to understand that.
Yeah. So, when in the early days of rock and roll, all that stuff was recorded straight to 2-track. As a matter of fact, pre-stereo, it was recorded just down to a mono mix.
And to be clear, we're talking tape. This was
Tape. Yeah,
reel to reel
magnetic
tape.
tape. Yeah.
Yep.
And they would literally edit takes together with a razor blade. And if it was done well, you would never know. I mean, some of the best songs you've ever heard in your life as a person who listens to music were edited with literally scotch tape and razor blades, right? And so
Crazy.
then the technology kind of jumped forward to 4 tracks, and these are still big reel-to-reel machines, and they then were able to figure out how to chain them together so that you could have, 4 tracks on one and 4 tracks on the other, and kind of cobble together 8 tracks, and then eventually to the point where you had two 24-track machines that you could slave together. And I'm not a big fan of using that word in this context, but I can't think of another word to put there. And that's how you get something like Bohemian Rhapsody. You get two 24-track machines working together to create that. But if all you have is a 4-track, if you're recording in mono, you can dump the drums down to 1 track, right? But if you're recording in stereo, the drums go to 2 tracks, right? So now you've only got 2 tracks left on that machine. So a lot of times what they would do is they would use 2 machines and kind of ping pong back and forth. So they'd take the 4 tracks from one machine and record those onto 2 tracks of the second machine and play 2 new tracks live, a piano track or a guitar track or a vocal track. And that's how you would get like the really early cool stuff that bands like the Beatles and the Beach Boys were doing. We're all done on 4-track machines with this, bouncing back and forth. The downside to that is when you record a recording, you lose some of the sonic fidelity.
Right.
So you have to anticipate.
It gets a little duller.
Yeah, you have to anticipate that and figure out ways to kind of get the shimmer back. And the way that I did it was just I would always record the bass first along with the drum machine. And if you listen to it by itself, it was the nastiest, nasaliest bass sound you ever heard.
Yeah.
But by the time it goes through 4 or 5 bounces back and forth, all that high end is gone, and all you hear is the thump and the bass. Yeah, so it was a lot of fun, but the fun for me was figuring out how to make those adjustments on the fly and figure out how to make all those things happen. I looked at it kind of like a puzzle to solve.
Back in the day, I had a 4-track recorder. I probably shouldn't have, because here's how I used it. I was in a Rush cover band, and we wanted everything to sound as close to the album as possible. If you listen to the song Natural Science, there's the sound of like water, like in tide pools, because they're talking about tide pools. And so, yeah, what my drummer thought would be cool was to put the 4-track in the freaking bathroom and use a drumstick to swish the goddamn toilet.
Did it sound right?
No, it sounded like someone
switching a drumstick in a toilet.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. And after the fact, but it was so funny. We're like, this is the greatest thing ever. We're like, we all thought we were George Martin.
Yeah.
So
that's funny.
I had to tell that story.
I had a Tascam Porta Studio, and I had a Fostex. I forget the model. I know I had an X15, but I had a later one that it looked like a mixing board with a tape player on the side of it. I don't remember what the model was, but that was good stuff, man. I really enjoyed that era of my life.
Do you remember the next stage in multi-track recording that came after the cassette tapes?
It was I don't, because I stayed with a 4-track until I switched to Pro Tools and a computer.
There was this weird in-between stage. Roland made them. I don't know if Tascam might have as well, but Roland,
there were some digital recorders though.
Digital
DAT.
In the home market, there were digital multi-track recorders that were basically like the 4 tracks, but without the cassette. So they were, and they, some of them even had built-in effects, but that was the consumer level. In the pro level, yeah, there was ADAT. ADAT was the digital version of cassette. And then eventually when hard drives got big enough, we got rid of ADAT altogether.
Yeah. Tascam got into that. Now that I'm looking at them, I remember that era.
Yeah, I had one of those too. They were fun.
I skipped that era. I stuck with my cassettes until, dude, I used my 4-track recorder until probably 2002 with my Roland drum machine. I mean, it worked for what I needed to do with it. I wasn't playing that stuff for anybody.
It's just for you.
Yeah, it was just for me.
So your first DAW was Pro Tools.
Yeah, Pro Tools LE.
Okay, what do you think mine was? I'll give you a minute to guess.
I don't know, whatever the crappy version of Pro Tools was for Windows, because you hadn't switched to Mac yet.
I beg your pardon. I was definitely on Macs, and it was definitely Mark of the Unicorn Digital Performer.
Mark, never heard of her. Sorry.
What? You never heard of Digital Performer?
No. Well, see,
Gosh.
because one of my buddies used Pro Tools, and I went to his house and we did some recording, and I was like, I'm going to get a system exactly like this so we can trade tracks back and forth.
Did you just OS shame me on this podcast?
I did. I didn't just OS shame you, man. I totally platformed you.
Listen, you will not shame me. I use both Macs and Windows. They both have their place. Like Telecasters, we will not get into a fisticuffs.
That's fine.
Today.
I have a Windows computer because seriously, because one of the diagnostic tools I use for working on motorcycles doesn't have a native Mac app. It only works. It works on Mac, but it's a bodge, and you got to run it with it. You've got to have an internet connection and blah blah blah.
That's because Macs are for Kardashians who are on their way to get their pumpkin spice latte, and Windows machines are for people that actually want to get something done.
Oh, dude, I don't know when. Ladies and gentlemen, excuse me for a second. I'm Andrew. Don't pay attention to this. I don't know what time it is, what time of year it is when you're listening to this, but for me, it's the end of September in 2023. Mm-hmm. And the end of September in this time period means the ascent of the pumpkin spiced every goddamn thing in the world. And I just want to tell you, I just want to encourage you, ladies and gentlemen, resist it. Pumpkin spice is not that good. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled program.
No, hot take. Big fan. Got my first one of the season yesterday.
Oh, no. I'm so ashamed.
But hold on, in my defense, it was on my way to therapy and I was feeling vulnerable.
Hey, self-care is an important thing. And I will say, I love pumpkin pie. I've always loved pumpkin pie since I was a kid, but I realized that's not really made with pumpkin. That's made with squash. And my mom used to make like a pumpkin gingerbread thing that was just amazing. And I convinced, my wife likes to bake. She doesn't like to cook. I cook. She likes to bake. I don't like to bake. Because baking doesn't really leave any room for improvisation.
No, it does not.
You improv on top of the stove. You do not improv in the oven. Well, she likes to be able to follow instructions.
You got to be really good at baking to improv. Let's put it that way.
You do. And I convinced her to find a recipe to make that. And so she makes that once or twice a year. And I enjoy that. But we have gotten way off track.
Welcome to Different Strings, a pumpkin spice latte adjacent podcast.
Yeah. So this is what happens between the opening act and the main band is everybody goes into the other room and gets a drink and goes to the bathroom and starts talking.
I'll never forget the person, whoever gave us this feedback, I'm not going to name and shame. He said, yo, stick to the topic. You guys get way off track. And I told Wes that, and he was like, we're not a short form podcast, Andrew.
No, we're not.
No. So whoever's out there listening and wants us to stay on track, we are very sorry, but we're not sorry. Sorry, not sorry, I guess.
Yes, but we are getting back into our lane. We're here with the headliner. And the question, and Andrew brought this question up when we were having a conversation, and I thought it was a really, really great question. And here it is. Do guitarists resist change? And if so, why? So let's dig into that. What is like the short answer is of course they do. But
Yeah.
that doesn't tell us why, and it doesn't take into account Petrucci or Tosin Abasi, right? Have you seen his new line of guitars? They're freaky,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So what's your opinion? Do we resist change? I know I resist change.
Hmm.
I am literally okay. I'm recording my debut solo EP right now.
Hypersonic Secret.
Thank you. Hypersonicsecret.com. Buy the single. And I am using my dual processor Mac G4
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
running,
whoa, 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 whoa.
yeah,
What? The
yeah,
one, what?
G4 with OS 9 running Pro Tools LE 6.4 with the Digi 001 interface. Now, everybody listening to this is going to have to pause and go look up all that stuff because Digi design isn't even a thing anymore. Now it's Avid.
Avid.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew this until just now. You're still a G4 and it runs?
Oh, dude, it runs like a champ. I've got 4 hard drives in it. I replaced the little things that start to go bad as they go on.
All right. So
Yeah. So I absolutely resist change.
certainly in that area.
Yeah.
Um,
If well, and here's the thing, right? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I know how to record with this rig. So why get a rig that I'm going to have to dump a bunch of money into and then experience a massive learning curve before the system dies?
that's fascinating. So I actually admire there's a small piece, not a small piece, there's a small piece of me or a large piece of me that actually admires the fact that you've resisted upgrading that computer, despite the fact that Pro Tools has evolved so much since your version
Yeah.
that there could be improvements that you could be taking advantage of. There could be performance improvements on new Macs you could be taking advantage of.
Yep.
And you're like, hey, this is works for me.
Yeah. And the reason that it still works for me is because I don't do my own mixing. I send my tracks to somebody who has a brand new
Uh-huh.
hot shit at cutting edge system and they do the mixing. And they have all the plugins and the dial-ups and all the cool stuff that the kids
Okay.
are using.
Okay.
And they make my stuff sound awesome. My responsibility is to get good tracks.
And that's really the job of the pre-computer.
Yeah.
That's you, the fingers, the gear, the playing, the preamp in your, digi. And then
Yep.
once it hits the hard drive, it's done.
Yeah.
Whereas mixing is all after the fact.
I still record like I'm using a tape machine,
Gotcha. Hmm.
but I just do it with a 20-year-old computer.
Okay. Yeah, 20. There is not a piece of technology in my house that's older than 6 months. I'm telling you, it's
Dude, your kid isn't even 20.
no, no, he's not. That's crazy. Yo, mad props to you. And also for listening to me say mad props and not vomiting.
Well,
That's amazing.
and here's the reason. I would love to have a brand new Pro Tools system,
You have five
but
grand,
no, I don't.
right?
And when I do, I end up having to buy a car. The
Or
last thing I spent 5 grand on was a car.
right, but not even for you.
Well, yeah, that's a solid point.
Uh, so,
uh,
all right, so, but you're okay, but you're not, in that case, you're not necessarily resisting change because I think you're kind of you're giving me a valid reason why maybe there's no need for change. But
yeah, but
where
I'm
have
also
you,
I am resisting change. I'm using the expense as an excuse
okay,
because I know how to use this system inside out. I've done so much recording with Pro Tools LE 6.4 that I know all the tricks and they're ingrained. I know the keyboard shortcuts. I know dude, man, I got this down.
so it's an efficiency too, like
Yeah,
the
it's
system.
efficiency. Yeah.
So
But
where
I
are you
also
resisting change, like legitimately resisting change, almost just for the sake of being obtuse?
tube amps. I won't give up my tube amps.
Okay.
I mean, I have one digital amp. I have one solid state amp. I have one digital amp. I have a line 6 duo verb, which is the weirdest line 6 modeling amp. It literally models two different amps with a limited selection. I think it's 10 different things you can choose. No effects, only reverb. And the gimmick of the amp is that you can blend two amp models together to create
Mm-hmm.
a stereo sound.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so you can get like a super punchy overdriven sound by blending together a Fender clean amp and a Marshall distortion sound. And now you've got this like really fantastic distorted sound that has the punch of a clean tone.
Mm-hmm. So I'm still going to argue, though, in my perception, I don't think you're being resistant to the point of obtuse because you've tried digital, you don't prefer it, you're sticking with what you like. I think how
Yeah.
here's how I envision someone who resists change. Okay. Someone who, I don't know, someone who refuses to use pedals that have or don't have true bypass.
Okay. And then they're like a dick about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, I only use true bypass now because true bypass are so much better. We talked about
Right.
this.
Yeah. And if
And
you
like,
don't use true bypass, you
mhm,
suck.
right. So someone who resists true bypass because for no reason other than they heard true bypass is not good. Like, I think that's to me is being resistant to the for really no reason.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
and
I
you
get that.
can't, and I don't think most people can hear the difference between true bypass and buffered bypass. I think that's all marketing hype and
Certainly nobody in the audience, man. Nobody in the
mm-mm,
audience. And not only that, not only can they not hear the difference, they don't care.
mm-mm.
With the exception of an Eric Johnson concert.
Yeah.
I would posit that at an Eric Johnson concert, there are both people who can hear the difference and people who care.
Mm-hmm.
And the number one purveyor of that is Eric Johnson.
Mm-hmm. I also, here's another thing. Let's say your first guitar is a Strat. First,
My first real guitar was a Strat.
okay. Have you played other than Strats in your life?
Yes.
Okay. But I know people and I have met people who first guitar was a Strat, and ergo, I will never play anything but a Strat again. Oh, I'm sorry. That's got a single cutaway. I will never pick it up. Ooh, that's so purdy.
Strat
What
right
is
next to
that?
me.
So that's resistant to the point of being obtuse.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not even going
Yeah.
to try something that's a little different because it's different. And I don't think there's anything wrong with you or I trying something and not liking it and sticking with what we like. And yes, tube amps are probably going to be the number one thing on the list because that's honestly where most of the technology has proliferated is in the amplifier world. Guitar technology, the reason this question came up is because if you look at a guitar, an electric guitar from the original Stratocaster from the 60s,
Mm-hmm.
or the 50s, sorry, and you look at a Stratocaster today, how different are they? In fact, how different are electric guitars, generally speaking, from the
Not
originals
that different.
from the 50s? You
No.
have one or wood, they're made of wood.
They have pickups,
They have
frets.
pickups, right? Most tremolo or stop tail, one or two cutaways. The knobs are always in the same place, generally speaking. There isn't any fancy technology other than wood, wire, magnets,
Yeah.
and where
It,
there have been technology improvements, they've been incremental and really hit or miss in terms of
yeah.
widely being accepted. So to me, I thought to myself, man, guitars really haven't changed all that much in
They haven't.
70 years. Now I get that's not
So why is that though?
because
Is it
right.
because is it our fault? Is it the player's fault, or is it the manufacturer's fault?
You said something earlier about if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah,
So
I did.
honestly, what did Leo get wrong?
The
Leo
seven
Fender.
and a quarter inch fretboard radius. As far as I'm concerned,
No.
that's the only thing he got wrong.
Oh, cheapers Christmas. What what else did he get wrong in the design of the Stratocaster? Because the Telecaster or the Broadcaster was his first out of the gate. And of course,
Yeah,
we
but
know
he
what he
was,
got wrong there. It was a Telecaster, and you didn't like
yeah,
Telecasters.
I mean, it was less a guitar and more of a, canoe propellant.
Yeah. So the Stratocaster was his next stab, and that was, as far as I'm concerned, it
Perfect.
was perfect. It was, I mean, you know, it's gotten better over the years
Yeah.
ish, but
Refined.
refined.
It's been refined. Yeah.
Right. So what have they done differently? Not much. You can still
Not
get the
much.
same single coil pickups, the same
Yeah.
six saddles. It's just this. It's why? Because it just freaking
Because
works.
it works.
It's
Yeah.
near perfect. It is near perfect. Refinement is the only thing you can do with the Stratocaster to make it better. And I'd argue most of the time it's not making it better. It's just making it different. It's appealing to a different market,
Yeah.
like hollow or semi hollow or something like
Yeah.
that. But okay. So in terms of your question, why is whose fault is it? I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I think it's one, I think guitars are just damn near perfect as they are. Like, how many different ways can you make a guitar? Well, we'll get
Right.
into that because there are things that are happening. I think the market is finally starting to evolve. You and I have had this discussion about modern bands.
Yeah.
For the first time in a long time, modern bands are pushing the limits. Guitars are being made longer scale because of drop tuning, and they're less, from an aesthetic perspective, I think they're less traditional. So I
Yeah.
think finally, this within the last few years, we're finally starting to see some shifts in the aesthetic of a guitar, and in some ways the functionality, like with Evertune and stuff like that. And we can kind of get into that later. So to me, I think we're finally starting to see some change in terms of resistance to change, I should
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. I
Um,
think you're right.
but
I think you're right. Now, I want to make sure you finish that thought before I say this next thing that I want to say.
yeah, I think I'm generally done. But the one thing I was going to say is the other reason why we're resistant to, I think we may have been resistant, is in this area, change can be costly
Yeah.
and it can be hit or miss.
Yeah.
So I think we tend to stick with what we like because you and I both know guitar has there's an emotional attachment to this.
Yeah.
This is an art form. And like if an artist finds a brush they like, they stick with it until, the bristles come out and then they get another one just like it. And so for me,
Yep.
I feel like because there's such an emotional attachment to this, we tend to stick with the stuff that works for us. And that can be
Mhm.
very different. So that was the only thing I wanted to say is I think sometimes that resistance there's a real reason behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. In a previous episode, we talked a lot about kind of toxicity in the guitar community. And one of those things was kind of being shamed for your gear. Were you ever concerned when you first started using that Kemper? Were you, I don't want to say afraid, but were you concerned with what other guitarists would think of you when you showed up at a gig with a profiling amp at all?
Mm, to a degree, I was. I felt some trepidation.
Ooh, nice word. You been to
Thank you.
college?
No, I felt some trepidation, if I'm being honest. With it was actually not the Kemper; it was the Line 6 Flextone.
Yeah.
Um, because even though I had had it and I liked it for practice, I was starting. This was early internet, and I had been reading things that made me feel like if I showed up at a gig with it, I was going to get laughed off the stage.
Right.
Like if they're great for at home, but if you show up at a gig like that, you're not a serious guitar player. And I
Yeah.
kind of thought like, what? It sounded silly, but back then I kind of cared about what was going to happen. I still had some degree of, I gave a shit what people thought,
Yeah.
and
Well,
I used to show up at gigs with the half stack, and it felt like I had a lot of power behind me. And this was the first time I was walking in with this dinky little 112 digital thing. And it was like,
Yeah.
I don't know, it just felt weird. And I was worried about it. And in the end, it didn't matter. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I do think there was a little bit of that.
I had a similar experience. I was playing with a band, and I was kind of it was two really strong songwriters. They had actually been signed to a record deal at one point, but now they were grown up and had families and jobs. Um, and I was kind of the stunt guitarist in the band, so that I needed to cover a lot of sonic territory, which is why I got this line 6 duo verb in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent hours programming the sounds and tweaking them and making sure that they were perfect for each song, and then copying them to new banks and tweaking them for other guitars,
Mm.
because I knew I might want to play different guitars at a gig or a series of gigs, so I wanted to not have to mess with them in it on the fly. And the first time we had a gig, I got a screwdriver and I took the nameplate off the front of the amp so nobody could see that it was a line 6 amp.
Yeah.
You'd have to know what the amp was to know it was a line 6 amp.
Yeah. I think I think that shame factor is real. I
Yeah.
was much younger back then. I cared what people thought. I walked in and it wasn't top of mind, but it was on my mind.
Yeah. I'm gonna show you a picture. This is how little I care what people think of me now. So I play in an indie rock band, right? And the scene is very heavily Fender based. Like all the bands that we play with, there's a lot of strats, there's a lot of tellies, there's a lot of offsets, and the possibility for being shamed is unfortunately pretty high. And here's how little I care about what they think of my guitar choices. I showed up at a gig with that. I'm absolutely not kidding.
uh,
And I played it. I played that and my heavy metal strat for the entire gig. And yes, I did dive bombs.
it, you said an indie rock band.
Yeah, indie rock band.
Did you do that for a reason? Because I know you have guitars that are better suited for that style of music. Why did you purposely walk in with Steve Vai's guitar collection that night?
Yeah. Well, the singer plays a Telecaster, so I try not to play single coil guitars.
Okay, that shouldn't be hard.
Yeah. And I just wanted to do something unexpected. We were playing at a skate shop, and it was going to be loud and raucous and punky, and I just wanted to do something that was a little metal.
All right, for
and a
those that
little
can't see
unexpected.
this, yeah, unexpected. For those that can't see this, this is an Ibanez like RG type guitar. It has
Yep.
24 frets. It is about the brightest red I have ever seen in my entire life. Double
Point of order,
locking.
Andrew, that is orange.
Okay. Did you just actually an orange guitar to me? All right.
I did.
All right. Maple
Double,
fingerboard, but wait, it gets better.
it does.
Red
Orange.
fretboard. Red fretboard marker. They're orange fretboard markers on a maple. It basically looks like your guitar has 100 black eye or pink eyes.
Yeah. Reverse headstock.
Oh yeah, the reverse headstock.
Yeah.
Double locking tremolo, because every indie band needs a double locking tremolo and dive bombs.
Yeah.
For those that can't see, it's the eyesorest of eyesores.
It is, absolutely. It is one of the least pleasant guitars to look at I've ever owned. It's an Ibanez RG 565 Genesis. So that's the reissue line.
They're wicked.
565 hum single configuration, although the single is not really a single, it's a twin blade humbucker. Double locking tremolo. It is a fantastic guitar.
Is it really?
And nice, I played it in.
It's a nice red guitar, Russ.
It's orange. I played it in public, my friend, in public.
All right. So clearly you're not completely resistant to change. I mean, come on.
Yes. Well, and I'm kind of beyond being shamed about my gear at this point. And I have that luxury because I have a lot of different gear that I can tailor to a gig or a recording session or my mood, to be frank. you
Hmm.
know?
I like it.
Yeah.
Um,
So sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to see, there's other reasons that I don't know that it's necessarily why guitar players resist change, but generally speaking, besides some of the social pressures and shame and thing like that, I also feel, we talked about familiarity, right? People, they like what they like, and they're
Yeah.
okay.
I like
Um,
I like double cutaway guitars. I have tried over and
mhm,
over to like single cutaway guitars, and I don't. I end up hating every one that I buy.
yeah. I mean, what about the fact that sometimes change in general can be hard?
Yeah,
Not just,
absolutely.
yeah. So there's fear of, I'm not necessarily in the guitar world, but fear of the unknown. Well, for me, sometimes with these modelers, as this stuff gets more and more complicated, I'm starting to get that as I get older, which is
Yeah.
embarrassing, I know. But the fact is, when new technology shows up at the house now, it takes a little longer for me to fully grasp what's going on. And
Yeah.
I got to be honest, I don't really like having that much technology injected into my hobby that I do for pleasure and fun.
Yeah. I want to
Um,
sit down and play guitar, not launch the friggin' space shuttle.
right. And there's a very good reason why, like, I don't want really big, complicated pedals on my board.
Yeah.
And pedals that have like presets and like you have to hold this to do that and tap this and do that. Like pedals are enough.
Yeah.
So I don't want super complicated pedals on my pedal board. The Strymon is probably the most complicated I would go,
Yeah.
and that's barely complicated. It's most of the tweaking you can do between gigs. You don't have to
Yeah.
worry about it at a gig. But I just don't want like those new Boss pedals that just came out where they're just
It's too
super,
much.
yeah,
It's
it's
too
too much
much.
for a pedal board. Like just put that in a rack and be done with
Yeah.
it.
My favorite, I'll tell you, my favorite adjustable thing on a pedal that I've ever owned and used in a live situation is my MXR Phase 90 has the rubber sleeve over the one knob on it so that
Yep,
you can grab it with your toe.
guilty. Do
That's
that
my
too.
favorite thing. And there's no programming, there's no confusion. You just hit that rubber sleeve with your toe and you've adjusted it.
Now, as far as manufacturers go, it's not like they haven't tried
No, they
to,
try all the time.
right. So I made a list. We made a list of some new ideas that didn't catch on. And if you want to
Yeah.
know why some people are resistant to change, it's because you walk into a guitar center and you see some of this crap on a guitar or amp or whatever, and you're like, what are you doing?
Now.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, let's talk about some of these things that could have really been great ideas, but guitar players were just not into it. I mean, absolutely not into it. The first thing you put down on this list is the best example, hands down, ever of guitar technology that guitar players instantly, absolutely refuse to implement. And that was
Gone
Andrew.
gone completely technology gone completely amok. Thank you, Henry Juskowitz. Gibson robot tuners.
Yeah, what a terrible idea.
Gibson robot tuners.
I mean, but
Mic drop.
it's in actuality, I think it's a really cool idea. You tell your guitar what to tune to, and you press a button and it tunes itself and you go on playing. That's a cool idea.
That makes me sad.
Did you ever play one?
I did.
Yeah.
In
The implementation was horrifying.
It was a
It was
nightmare.
terrible. Yeah.
I mean, they didn't work. If you strung your guitar out with new strings, pop them in these robot tuners and hit a button, and they all just tune your guitar and kept them there. Because
Yeah.
remember, the idea, I believe, was they would keep the guitar in tune if they detected micro changes in pitch. Am I crazy or no?
I don't remember that specifically, but that's how that would be my expectation.
But so
Because
when you,
otherwise, what's the point of having a robot tuner?
right, I mean, I don't remember if that was part of the deal because I remember thinking, well, what about if you bend a string? Is it not going to detect? Like, I didn't understand, but even the basic implementation of tuning, it was not just imperfect, it was loud.
Yeah.
As tuners go, they weren't very nice to begin with.
Nope.
They didn't even try to mimic the original look, which I think had they done that, like from the front, if they
Right.
had like the, you know, the Keystone, but from the back, do you remember what they looked like from the back?
A monstrosity.
They were, yeah, they were huge. It
Yeah.
was, and I mean, they just
And as
didn't
a result, they even made Les Paul's head heavy, which
like
is
this, like an SG.
yeah, they made Les Paul's balance like SGs.
Oh,
I mean, you
they
were
were,
constantly in a state of holding the guitar up with your left hand.
yeah. I
And it
think
was,
knowing Gibson, they probably still look at the robot tuner era as a success story.
they might. I mean, but once again, I got to say, really cool idea, just terrible implementation.
Yeah, like I feel like if you're going to make a guitar with that type of technology on it,
It's got to be perfect.
and don't put it on like a traditional looking classic Les Paul, like make a futuristic guitar
Yeah.
and make that the selling point. Like you could have made a
Put it on
futuristic,
an Explorer or a Flying V.
or make a new shape for a change, Gibson.
No.
Or no,
Hey,
but
we're traditionalists here.
right, right, traditionalists with mechanized tuners on our headstock.
Yeah.
So I'm going to skip around the list a little because I have to get to this next one.
What's the next one? Tell me what the next one is, because I
Right.
may have an opinion.
The PRS 5-way rotary switch.
Oh my, Andrew, I can now, you and I met because of PRS guitars.
Mm-hmm.
This is a well-known fact to anybody who's listened to more than one episode of this
Yep.
podcast.
We love them.
We both love PRS guitars.
Loved them for sure.
The 5-way rotary switch was a mainstay of the Custom 24 with the Sweet Switch.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, in my opinion, amazing. As long as you liked the 5 sounds,
Mm-hmm.
which some people did not.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many of these systems I jerked out of PRS guitars. If I tell you, man, if I had thought to hang on to the 5-way rotaries, I'd have a stash for retirement at this point that I could sell. I am not kidding.
Or why did you hate them? Because I might have hated them for a different reason.
Hate is a strong word. I did not like using them because the 3 or 4 sounds that I wanted it was too fiddly. It was too fiddly.
Okay.
Right? And what I would do, I would take these, I would jerk these right out of every PRS guitar that was requested. I would do it. I used to care when we would have little get-togethers, I would bring my soldering tools with me. Right? Do you remember at the PRS forum event?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting in the corner rewiring a Swamp Ash special in the middle of dinner. Right? I would take the Sweet Switch out, and I should have kept every single one of those instead of giving them back. Man, nobody wanted those parts. I'm sure they ended up in the trash.
Mm-hmm.
I would take the Sweet Switch out and replace it with a tone pot, usually a push-pull tone pot. I would take the 5-way out and replace it with a 3-way toggle, Les Paul style toggle.
Mm-hmm.
You could go neck both in bridge, and then the push-pull on the tone pot would tap both pickups at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It got to where I could make that mod with a Custom 24 in about 30 minutes with no damage to the
because you did it so much. So
because I did it so much.
You hated the sounds, or
no? I liked the sounds. I loved there's this one. I think it was either position 2 or 3, and it was this kind of nasally, angry, thinner tone. Definitely not full humbucker. It might have been an out of phase sound. But man, if you could cut to that right for a lead, man, your sound would just cut through the mix like that was its job.
Right.
Was it the greatest sound on its own? Probably not. But in a mix at a show with the PA pumping and everybody having a good time.
You said it was too fiddly, meaning hard to get to that sound because it was a 5-way rotary. And in my opinion,
strong detents, like click, 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 click.
Right. In my opinion, with sweaty hands and a pick in your hand, it was impossible to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that thing was a long time. It lasted.
Yeah, it did. PRS hung on to it for a long time. And I think I want to give Paul all the props for that, because those two ideas, the Sweet Switch and the 5-way rotary, addressed things that he found deficient in guitars.
Right.
And it was his whole purpose, was fixing those deficiencies in the most efficient way possible. And I
Hmm.
think he did that with the 5-way rotary. But guitar players are too impatient and we're too traditional. And we wanted a 3-way toggle switch on a 2 humbucker guitar. Click, click, click. That's
Yep.
all we want.
Yeah.
Flip it up, flip it down, flip it up, flip it down. The compromise was the push pull. You know how often I use push pulls on my guitars?
Not very often.
None, because I don't like those tapped sounds. They don't sound good to me. They don't work for me.
And again, in a live setting with a pick in your right hand, sometimes those push pulls are not the easiest thing in the world to do.
Yeah.
When you just want to get to a sound really quickly. See, Leo had it right the first time. Those 5-ways, I don't know, man. There's like, it's just, I'm sure if we stuck with those Paul Reed Smiths for another 20 years, we'd have gotten faster at it.
Yeah. Or, and my favorite thing was going for the push pull to get that tap sound and jerking the knob off the top of the pot.
Yeah.
And now what do? Now you've dropped your pick because suddenly your hand is filled with a pot knob.
You just sabotage yourself.
Yeah. And then you drop the knob because you got to get a pick to keep playing. And then you lose the knob. And now you got to find another knob.
Oh my God. All right. What's next on our list of ideas that sucked
Well,
donkey
I want to
testicles?
ask you about this thing because although I am familiar with it, I don't know what it is.
Okay.
And that is the Buzz Fightin' tuning system.
Oh,
Now, I think that you know about it and I don't, shows exactly why it didn't catch on. Although it is a cool name, Buzz, the Buzz Fightin' tuning system. It sounds legit, man. It sounds official. It
mm-hmm.
sounds like he knows what he's talking about. So what in the hell is he talking about? What is the Buzz Fightin' tuning system? What does it do? Because I
So
know how to tune a guitar.
yeah, I don't know the technical details in terms of the offsets, but generally speaking, it's a combination of a compensated nut, which means the nut slots are slightly moved. In other words, and I might say it wrong, but so if you when you cut slots in a regular nut, the string breaks over the nut saddle in the same place, right?
Yeah.
In a straight line. Well, with a compensated nut, it's actually not in the same place. They move where the string breaks over the nut, they move it up a little bit in certain places. I think it's either the G or something. Yeah, if look up compensated nut on the interwebs and you can see.
Well,
Ernie Ball uses a compensated nut.
I've heard of that. And isn't the idea to do like what they call a sweetened tuning like they do
It's
with a
also
piano?
right. It's not for the buzz system. It's not only the nut. It's also the saddles in a certain place. And there's a
Well,
whole
yeah,
like
that's called intonating your guitar.
well, but there's certain offsets, and they see the thing is that back in the day, if you wanted to, people would come into the shop and ask for this on their guitars, and
Right.
you had to take a special class to learn how to do this.
Well,
Um,
that right there is why it didn't catch on. Because
well,
just knowing that it took a class meant, oh, that's expensive.
right. Here's the funny thing. I knew when I worked in the shop, here's what I was told by the luthier there. He said, I'll gladly do this, but if you cut the slots on the nut right and you do the fretwork precision enough and intonate the guitar properly, you don't need that.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it shouldn't have caught on because you were fixing a problem that I don't think necessarily existed, in my opinion.
Yeah. The problem was lazy guitar setup work.
I think that's closer to the truth. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now I think you still get it. And look, Tom Anderson uses it on all of his guitars, and Tom Anderson's no dummy.
He's no slouch. Yeah, that's true.
No, and Ernie Ball uses a compensated nut. Whether they use the Buzz system, I don't think they do, because if you use the Buzz system, you have to put the
You have to
Buzz
pay for it.
logo on the back of your neck headstock, right? So, I mean, I don't think it's the worst idea, but there's like not everyone does it across the board, and I think it just, to me, that means it really hasn't caught on as like we're just gonna this becomes an industry standard thing.
Well, I'll
So
tell you what thought just went through my head. I'm not buying an Ernie Ball guitar because I don't want to have to learn. I don't want to have to learn how to set up a new guitar.
you do not have to. On an Ernie Ball, if you put strings on with the compensated nut, as long as you intonate it properly, you're fine.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll take your
But
word for it.
but Ernie Balls are highly expensive guitars. So am I boring you? Am
No,
I
no,
boring you?
I haven't been sleeping very well, man. I don't know if you know this, but I had a piece of my bathroom ceiling cave in and woke me up at 5 o'clock in the morning the other day, and I just haven't been able to get good sleep since.
Yeah,
Scared the crap out of me and my wife.
you get a lot on your mind right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not great. All right,
Yeah, and
everyone, show some love.
right at the top is the Buzz Fighting tuning system and why I never bothered learning how to make that installation on the guitar.
All right, so what are some other horrible ideas that just have, just technology and ideas going to run amok?
What? Okay, let's talk. So we've talked about line 6 a little bit in this episode, in previous episodes. Let's talk about the variacs. Not the variac, which is a way to ramp up the voltage in an electronic unit that you are testing, which is the true proper use of a variac. But a variax, right? They're playing on the word axe as a slang term for guitar. And the variax was
mansplaining the name of the guitar.
I am. I don't call that mansplaining. I call it Drew-splaining because I'm really only telling you, other people know, but I knew you'd never picked up that axe thing, did you?
No, completely clueless.
Completely right over your head. Right. So the variax, for anybody that doesn't know, it looked like a regular guitar, but it had no pickups visible. It had some kind of magic pickup, and then it had a volume knob, and I think it had a rotary knob. Did it have a rotary switch or a blade switch?
It had a rotary and a blade, by the way.
Yeah, but instead of changing the pickup selection, it would change the sound of the guitar coming out of the jack.
It modeled the guitar sound, and
modeled the guitar sound, exactly. So you could make it sound like a Les Paul or a Strat or an acoustic, right? Steve Howe uses one on stage with Yes instead of an acoustic guitar. He uses a variax.
Yep.
And when he plays it, it sounds like he plays it at the beginning of Roundabout. Boom, bling, right? The harmonics.
Yep. And there's also a 12 string in there and a banjo in there.
Yeah. And I'll tell you why that didn't catch on. Because people didn't want that. People didn't want that.
They should want it. They're amazing studio tools. I have a funny story to tell you about that guitar.
Well, yeah, but so great. Enjoy your studio tool. Nobody wants to listen to you play a banjo.
Well, no one wants to hear me play a banjo. That's for damn sure.
Well, yeah. I mean, what's a 6-string banjo? A crime against humanity. That's what it is.
So within the last year or so, I was casually jamming with a friend or two of mine. Yes, I have those friends. And one of the guys was a new guy to the group, and he brought a variax and a Kai head, not a Kai, a head rush. Wait, is it head rush? A digital modeler? Yeah.
Yeah.
So he brought in a variax and
a head rush.
And a head rush.
And you guys played with him, didn't you?
We did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I got to be honest. He was the stunt guitarist. Like, he was there to be like, when we needed an acoustic, he would play acoustic. And when we wanted a 12 string, a Rickenbacker sound, I got to be honest with you, for that environment in that way, I think perfect. It was perfect. And the 12 string sound was
pretty good.
Convincing. Yeah. This thing tracked beautifully. It sounded fantastic. Now, it made me think, like, think about all the studio situations where I'm like, man, I wish I had a 12 string. I wish I had this. I wish I had that.
Yeah.
So from a studio perspective, I think it's phenomenal. Here is the problem with it. As guitars go, it didn't play great.
No, it was
it was a very inexpensive guitar with a very expensive set of electronics. And to me, a guitar is a guitar first.
Yeah. And it
And
didn't have a lot of flexibility. It was difficult to set up. It
mhm,
was, the fretwork was terrible.
terrible out of the
Just
gate.
terrible.
Not a
Yeah.
great guitar, and so for me, it wasn't worth the coin that they were asking for it. And
Yeah.
they now you can get them dirt cheap, but no interest.
Yeah. I'm over buying a guitar that immediately has to go to the shop for fretwork.
Yeah,
I don't want to do that anymore. I'm tired of doing it.
yeah, I don't blame you.
Now the upside is my favorite tech guy is getting really good at fretwork.
It's getting a lot of practice from
He's
you.
getting a lot of practice. He's getting so much practice, he bought new tools,
Exactly.
Andrew.
Yeah, you whirl his fretting tools down.
Yeah. And I'm
Oh,
not
that's
even
great.
going for stainless steel. But another example of that was Roland did a pickup that you could put on a
Oh,
guitar
they
and
sure did.
plug into a guitar synthesizer.
Do you remember that monstrosity?
Yes, that was if I wanted a synth player in the band, I'd have a synth player in the band. I mean, did anybody use those for anything other than demonstration purposes?
Sugarfish. So remember, I talked about sugarfish in a previous
Sugarfish.
episode.
Yes.
Sugarfish, and the other guitar player in that band, the one that used the Mesa DC5 and no
Uh-huh.
pedals, he also eventually went out and bought one of those Roland units,
Okay.
despite the fact that we had a keyboard player in the band. I know. I know. There was a moment of stunned silence where Wes's jaw was agape because, like, why would you? I don't know. I don't understand. But he had to have this his 70s Strat modified to hold this monstrosity of a Roland pickup.
Yeah.
And the
They were
thing,
not pretty.
and they didn't track that great. The technology wasn't that great back then.
No.
And again, it's like, why? We have a keyboard player in the band. Well, I'll tell you why, because the keyboard player only played piano. He wasn't a synth guy. He was a
Oh, okay.
piano
Yeah.
guy. And
He was
and this
a tinkler.
right, right. And he wanted synth sound. He's like, well, I guess the only way we're gonna get that is if I do
If
it.
I
And
do
so he
it.
went and bought anyway,
I
garbage.
played
He
I played I
never
played
used
with a piano guy like that in one of my bands, and our solution was to fire him and get a different keyboard player.
oh, and here's the other, yeah, big bingo. And here's the other thing. This guitar player I'm talking about, after he got the Roland unit and the VG unit, the floor unit, instead of using his Mesa DC5, which wasn't a terrible sounding amp,
No.
he only used this thing and the amps that came in it. And again, we're
Huh.
talking really old technology that the
Yeah.
amps sounded like garbage.
Not
And
awesome.
I'm like, dude, you just lowered your value in this band by like 100% with that
Yeah.
thing.
I hope he's not listening.
I don't know where he is, man.
Okay,
I
good.
looked him up to
Then
see where
he's probably not listening.
no, he's a good dude, man. I just don't know where he went. All right.
So did anybody that we would have heard of, anybody I would have heard of other than this dude you knew, use
Adrian Ballou
Adrian Ballou? Okay, I've
from
heard that
King
name.
Crimson. Yep, King
Yeah.
Crimson. Dude really like loved his VG, but he was
Fantastic.
it. He was it.
As
I don't know anyone else that used it.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know, man. I messed with it a little bit when I would come across ones that somebody had, or if it was set up in Guitar Center or whatever. You do some really cool stuff with it, but
No
not
thanks.
practical.
No.
Yeah, and yeah.
No. Expensive, pointless. And the Strat it came on, by the way, not the best Strat
Not
in the
the
world.
best. Yeah, they put it on the cheap. They put it on like the Variax. They put it on a cheap guitar because the electronics were so expensive. They had to keep it the price reasonable. So they cheaped out on the guitar, which, yeah.
All right. I got one for you.
Okay, hit me.
I'm going to hit you with this one.
So another guitar tech idea that didn't catch on.
The headless guitars.
Yeah, those really did not. I mean, like Eddie Van Halen played that one striped Steinberger for Summer Nights. Was it Summer Nights? And then yeah, so that kind of was the peak of the Steinberger popularity. I remember seeing a few bass players that played headless basses.
Geddy Lee used one notoriously for one tour. Sting. There was a lot of bass players that
used a bass player. Sorry, I just wanted to draw you up short. Yeah, I mean,
They were notorious. They were easy to find. Those Steinberg headless guitars as or basses. The basses were very popular in
Yeah.
the 80s. Every 80s band
Ooh,
had a
ooh,
headless. Yeah.
Vito Bratta.
Yes.
He played a headless guitar for a
Yes,
while.
he played a head. It was a Steinberger, and it
Yeah.
actually wasn't just the little.
His was
For those,
guitar shaped.
yes, it was. Yeah, it was a later model. The first Steinbergers, folks, not only were they headless, but they also had a body that looked like a Kleenex box.
It looked like a broom. It looked
Yeah,
like a short broom.
the rectangular body. It was really small. Um, so then,
I believe it.
weirdly,
I believe it was a trapezoid. I'd have to
it looked
look
like a
that up to be
Kleenex
sure.
box. It looked like
It
a
did.
shoe box.
It
Okay,
did. It
Steinberg.
absolutely did.
Is it Steinberg or Steinberger? It was
I
Steinberger.
believe it's Steinberger.
Yeah, Steinberger. Steinberg is the company that was bought by Yamaha that makes Cubase. Andrew, get your act
Yes.
together. It was
Come on, Andrew.
Steinberger. All right,
Somebody's getting referred to HR.
getting lazy. And also, yeah, exactly. And I'm stop drinking during the show, Andrew. I'm self-sabotage. All right, anyway, here's the funny thing about headless guitars. Are you noticing anything in the industry lately, my friend?
Tosin Abasi, man.
What? Who's that? I don't know that guy.
And I know who he is. But I probably see more headless guitars now
Pliny plays one.
than I did back then.
Do you
Kiesel
know?
makes them, don't
Do you
they?
know? Do you know who Pliny is?
I do not know who
Look him
Pliny
up.
is. I was hoping you weren't going to ask me that.
Plini. He's not a guy I particularly. He's an Instagrammer. Just
Pliny the Elder was
Ple-
a Roman philosopher.
yes, it is not him. He does not use a headless guitar.
So this guy's real name is not Gaius Plinius Secundus.
Well, I don't know. I don't know his life,
Okay,
but
well,
what I
I
do
think
know is he plays a
what you should
headless
really be
guitar.
scared about is I didn't have to look that up.
I I am. That was a massive flex. I am a little intimidated right now. um. So where
Oh, it's
are
not
we
spelled
even?
this. It's not spelled the same.
Where are we even going with this conversation?
You're
Oh,
talking to me about Pliny. I see a picture of him playing a Strandberg.
yes, headless guitars are
So
making a comeback.
headless, weird shape, fan frets.
Yes,
It's like the trifecta of
of
bizarre
the
guitars.
Instagrammer guitar player.
Steve Vai described Pliny as, quote, the future of exceptional guitar playing, end quote.
Has he heard Guthrie Govan?
Well, I don't know. I have.
That dude is the future of guitar. The future is now, old man. Listen to Guthrie. He's the future. All right.
Uh,
So I'm getting all right. I'm way off track because I'm tired. You're tired. We're both drunk
Pliny.
on power. Pliny. Steinberger headless guitars were a flop.
Yeah,
And
they
now
absolutely were.
50, 40 years, 30, 40, 50, 100 years later, headless guitars are making this massive comeback. And of all things, the metal industry. Here's another one. The bass player for Slipknot uses a headless bass, but not a
Oh,
Stein.
they're like a famous band.
Yeah, they're like Slipknot. They're like dad rock now.
Are they really? I don't
Oh,
know.
they've
I know who
really.
they are, so they must be passe already. Strandberg makes 7 and 8 string. They make
Do they make a 9 string? And why not a 10 string?
7, 8, and they've all got that weird body shape.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
it's like weird. It reminds me of the Reb Beach Ibanez. You remember that had the cutout behind the
Yes.
bridge?
Yes. Also, Strandberg has a very weird neck shape. If you're on the website, look at the back of the neck shape. It's very strange. But anyway,
I'm out then.
all right. The point. Oh yeah, the neck shape is bizarre. I don't know. It's supposed to be like super comfortable, but I have never had a chance to play one live or not in person, so I can't attest to
And
that.
they're expensive too. They're like
Well,
$1,700.
oh, those are the offshore models.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's some in here that are like 2,500. Are those still offshores?
And probably not, but they get higher. Yeah, Strandberg was a premium brand until they recently, within the last few years, started going overseas, and those are the 1,700. Yeah.
Let's see. Let me switch to price high to low. Strandberg Bowden Singularity NX7 True Temperament 7-string electric guitar in red blast on sweetwater.com for $3,995.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're talking Fender custom shop prices
Yeah.
used on the
Yeah.
used market. Folks, this is what happens when we don't script our episodes, which we don't. In real time, you're watching just
Watching
brain,
it come apart. You
yeah.
know, we've done a lot of talking about ideas that didn't catch on. Do you want to switch to some ideas that did catch on, some stuff that guitar players jumped on?
Right now we must do that.
Okay, what's your number one? What's your number one?
Okay, you know, number one, you had to put me stainless steel frets. It's
Yeah,
catching on.
yeah, it is. And you see, it's catching on to the point where manufacturers are putting them on guitars. Fender has a
Yes,
guitar. I think it's called the American Ultra or the American Ultra Deluxe or something
yes,
like that.
yeah.
Strats and
September.
Tellys.
Mark the date. September 27th. I read that yesterday. I read the press release. The first Fender with stainless steel frets has finally happened.
Yeah.
And it has a Floyd Rose, and I'm out. They
Hey, well,
found a way to keep
the Floyd Rose is
me from
something else
spending my money, dude. They put a Floyd Rose on it.
Yeah, the Floyd Rose, the whole double locking concept took off with the Super Strat era.
Huge, dude. That's a great. I don't know why I didn't say that first. That is the greatest example of a new idea that really did catch on.
Yeah,
Huge.
that was my number one. That's why you didn't say it.
Yeah, huge. It is huge. I can't even. Okay, so the first Van Halen, I'm skipping stainless steel frets because who cares? The first Van Halen album was a standard Strat bridge. Let's take a minute to appreciate that at least the first Van Halen album was done before the Floyd Rose. He recorded all of that dive bombing nonsense with a standard Strat bridge. Okay, so that's amazing in my opinion. Now, Eddie decked his bridges.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you are used to playing a Strat and you know those vintage bridges, if you don't deck them, if you leave yourself a lot of wiggle room for like up and down motion, you
then
can't dive bomb.
Yeah, no, you can't.
You don't have enough room to go down. But if you deck them, you have a ton of room. And so he decked them to keep his guitars in tune when he was playing his normal style, and then he would dive bomb. Now, I believe that keeping an old Strat in tune after a dive bomb was probably a nightmare. Maybe, maybe it can be done. So long and short, the Floyd Rose happens.
Yeah.
And I do think
huge advance in guitar technology.
He had to be the reason. He had to be the reason that happened.
I think we can give Ed a lot of credit in that regard. You know, without Edward doing what he was doing in the late 70s and early 80s, there is a high probability that the Floyd Rose would not have caught on. Right? Nope. Because that's what the next thing was, hair metal and the Super Strat.
He was doing it, so
everybody had to do it. Yeah.
And once that happened, it was like everything he did, everyone did.
Yeah, absolutely.
People, so if you don't know, if you weren't there, like I feel privileged to have been young enough to have lived through what he did to music. I have never seen anything like it, never, except when Stevie Ray Vaughan came out. He did something different to guitar.
Yeah.
At the same time, actually, because he came out in the early 80s, but I digress. What Van Halen did to guitar, I strongly believe you are correct that he revolutionized how the instrument is played, and the Floyd Rose proliferated because of that style becoming everywhere. It was just everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, the Ibanez I showed you earlier has their version of the Floyd Rose, the double locking system on it. Yeah. But I think stainless steel frets is also a really great example, because that's something that was like a slick mod that In the Know players did. And then some small builders were doing it as a custom upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
And now Fender does it. Now, are they doing it across the line? No.
Not yet.
But yeah, I mean, the upside to stainless steel frets is they last for a freaking long time.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
The downside is they eat tools. And if they're they've got to be properly crowned and leveled. Excuse
You
me,
know,
leveled and crowned.
yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. I think I I'll try to link to it, and if I can't find it, I apologize. But I'm pretty sure that I read an article that said that the hype about the tool eating was overdone. Like good tools, even good tools wear out or something. I don't know. Like
Yeah, yeah,
I'll
absolutely.
try to
Good
find it. Like
tools.
it might be overhyped that they eat tools, but you're not wrong that they are
Yeah.
harder to work with because they're harder material.
Well, and when you think about it, right, a lot of the tools that are used in fretwork are made out of steel themselves.
Hmm.
So when they're working on a nickel silver alloy, that metal is much softer than the
It,
tool.
it gives right away.
The tool will wear out over time.
Hmm.
When you start using that same tool on a stainless steel fret that is almost the same hardness as
Hmm.
the tool is going to wear out much more quickly.
Yep.
And
Yep.
now, as things go forward, the tool makers need to take this into consideration and maybe adjust the alloys that they use to make the tools to take stainless steel frets into account.
I think some of them may be doing that.
And
Are they starting to use?
that's how I know stainless steel frets are going to stick around, because now the
Yeah,
tool manufacturers, the ancillary industries have adjusted.
I'm seeing like diamond this and diamond that
Yeah,
in fret tools now. Okay. Yeah,
yeah,
so maybe they're adjusting for this. Okay, that's kind of cool.
yeah, yeah.
You know what's caught on? Also, hey, interesting. All right, so let me get real here.
You gonna set
The
this up? Okay, get real
okay.
with me.
All right. Have you heard the meme that the adult film industry or the adult movie industry is the reason why internet technology has improved
Oh, dude,
leaps and bounds?
that's not a rumor. That's not a myth. That is a stone cold fact.
Right, like streaming and like all.
High
Okay,
definition. Yeah,
right.
all of it.
Okay, so I know that that's a generally accepted fact
Yeah.
that
And that,
the adult
yeah,
industry. Okay,
that's what people come here for, right? Mental health advice and porn.
right. The metal industry is doing that with rock. Can we take a minute to appreciate the metal industry? We've already talked about stainless steel frets, which is predominantly where that's getting used, although
Yeah.
not solely anymore, which is thumbs up. You know. Also, we talked about headless guitars.
Yeah.
Those are fan frets. Those are predominantly in the metal industry. We've
Yeah.
talked about double locking tremolos,
Uh-huh.
predominantly rock and metal. And here's one: Evertune bridges.
The I'm sorry. A sphincter says what?
Evertune bridges.
Evertune bridges.
Evertune bridges.
I gotta admit I'm behind. I don't know what an Evertune bridge is, man.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Now I gotta look another thing up. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, I'm sorry. I do know about these. I did not know they were called Evertunes.
Mm-hmm. So if you don't know, kids, an Evertune bridge is a massive unit. No. And if you have to fit them into a guitar, you're
Yeah, you
doing
gotta
some,
like
yeah,
carve this giant
yeah,
rectangular hole clear through the body.
you're routing the bejesus out of your guitar. But if they come stock, you don't know the difference. Okay. Evertune, basically, I don't know how they work. I just know what they do, which is keep your guitar in the tuning you want it to stay in, no matter how hard you freaking pick or fret.
Oh, I played one of these,
Mm-hmm.
and the guy had set it up so you couldn't even when you bent the string, the fretted note didn't change.
Mm.
It was
Weird.
disconcerting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that
Not
was
That's not the
absolutely
standard.
bizarre. No, no, he was doing it just to show me. So I have seen this.
Yeah. They work. And to me, the where the robot tuners failed, this succeeds in keeping your guitar in tune. You know, metal guys. Um, so if you don't know, kids, the metal players pick really hard. In fact, I've watched my son play, and he's definitely into the metals, but not just the metal.
Right.
But his right hand is his very powerful picking hand. I can tell you he picks hard. He needs to play heavier strings because
Yeah.
if he doesn't, he will knock the strings out of tune. And the Evertune is designed so that it detects those changes in tension and automatically adjusts.
Huh.
It's really cool, and they really do work. They're not a fad, but they're not. The thing is, they're not making the rounds in the general population of guitar players. I think they're still niche for metal, but there's a ton of metal players, so
Yeah.
and people love them. So to me, that's an idea that's caught on. Just because it's not being used in country music doesn't mean that it's not a great idea.
Is any manufacturer using these?
Yeah, tons of them.
Okay. Can you say them?
I bet you find them on. I bet you can find them on Ibanez. I bet you can find them on.
You're betting, you're not guaranteeing. I'm looking at the Evertune website and I see PRS, Jackson, Ibanez, ESP, Fender,
I don't think that PRS is coming with Evertune.
Gibson. Yeah, none of these are coming stock with an Evertune bridge.
Well, I can tell you that
Jackson, Charvel,
Schecter's
Schecter, maybe. I could see Schecter doing it.
ESPs,
I could,
Jacksons.
yeah. I mean, but only a couple of these Jacksons are marked as new guitars. So it looks to me like Evertune is buying these guitars, routing the holes,
They
installing
do.
the system.
They do. But you can get an Ibanez Prestige with an Evertune. ESP makes, if I'm looking on Sweetwater, ESP has 26 models that come with an Evertune.
Okay.
26.
Okay.
Jackson has 7. Schecter has 2. BC Rich has 11. Now, kids that you don't know BC Rich from back in the day, they were made in America, and now they're made. Well,
Not in America.
actually it looks like they're starting to make them in America again.
I'm sure they do.
Someone must have bought. Oh, and this one, this BC Rich is an Andy James signature, my friend. That means it comes with Fishman Fluence. There's another idea that's caught on. Different pickup technology. Fluent.
Yeah.
They are not the same.
As
So
regular pick. And what about active pickups? Those were huge. I mean, David Gilmour uses active pickups on one of his guitar.
yeah, I had to remind
Zach
you of that,
Wild?
I think.
Yeah, you did.
Of their
I did.
EMGs. And I know you're feeling on EMGs.
Yes, I'm not a fan.
No, not a fan. So active pickups, big new idea, different technology, different pickup technology. I dig that. Oh, and speaking of that, I don't want to steal any of your thunder, but dude, what about that Bluetooth switch that Seymour
Dude, the
Duncan
Seymour
released?
Duncan Bluetooth switch. What a great idea.
Now, I don't know if we can
Reprogram
say it's
your
caught
switch
on
with your
yet.
phone.
Yeah.
Well, it's brand new. It only came out this year.
I want to see what happens with that.
Yeah. And I did for a hot minute. I thought about getting one. I really did. But here's why I didn't. I didn't want to have another thing to Bluetooth to my freaking phone.
I know. I'm so sick of it.
I'm so tired of it. But I think for your boy, that might be your son, excuse me. That might be a really cool thing that he could really take advantage of.
I don't know who the market is for that thing, except people that just want to try. Like, who is the market? Just anyone who wants to try something a little different.
Yeah. Well, and I'm picturing some knucklehead at a show whipping his phone out of his pocket and telling the band to hold on while he reprograms his guitar.
What they said. That's very funny.
Yeah.
I actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I am getting so sick of things I have to plug in and charge overnight.
Oh, dude.
It's like it's our phones, it's our iPads, it's our laptops, it's our Kindles, it's our
And, yeah.
remotes,
Do you want it to be
Apple
the switch in your guitar now?
No,
I don't want to have to recharge the switch in my guitar.
It's getting old, dude. With certain pickups, you have to plug them in overnight.
No. Yeah.
The Fluence, I'm
man.
telling you,
There's
Fluence have to be charged.
I can't think of who makes it. Reverend has a Greg Koch Telecaster, and to get the pickups work just fine, but to get the superpowers, they have to be charged up by USB. There's a little USB port in the jack.
It's over, man. It's over. Game over. Game over. We're charging our pickups overnight, dude.
Yeah.
What has happened? All right. I still have a couple things that have caught on, new ideas. I'm
Okay,
gonna
hit
go
me.
back. I'm gonna go to an oldie but a goodie. Okay.
Hit me.
Weird shaped guitars.
Oh yeah, dude. The Flying V is, and its variations are probably more popular than they've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Randy Rhoads played a Flying V.
Yep.
You know,
Scorpions. Rudy
Jimi
Schenker.
Hendrix
Yeah.
had a Flying V. Now, it's not the guitar he's most well known for, but he had one and he
Right. He's
used it
known
in
for
public.
Telecaster. He's known for Telecaster.
No, Stratocaster. Jimi Hendrix was a Stratocaster player.
It's a Telecaster. He loved his Tele. He was also a chicken picking guy, wasn't he? Jimi Hendrix.
I can't even talk to you right now.
but
But you think about, I mean, offsets in general, weird shapes, Jazzmasters, Jaguars, huge in the indie music scene.
right.
I
What
mean,
did I say earlier
huge.
about Gibson? I said, hey, make a guitar that's shaped different for a change. They did. They made Flying V's and Explorers. Those were
and
wicked.
Firebirds.
People did
I had
not
a
like
Firebird.
them.
I loved my Firebird, man. It was
People,
such a cool guitar.
but people apparently were not big fans of these right away.
No, it was 1959, right? When the Flying V came out. That was a little too sci-fi for 1959.
It took a couple years until everyone was on LSD for those guitars to really take off, is what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. But that just shows once again, guitar players are traditionalists, and Gibson was bucking the trend, making these slab weirdo guitars. And people are like, nope, not buying that. That's why there's like, what are there, like 4 1958 Flying Vs?
Right.
And they're worth $1 gajillion, and Bonamassa owns 2 of them or something.
So dig this. I didn't mention it, but when I say weird shaped guitars, dude, Iceman.
Oh yeah, the Ibanez Iceman, Paul Stanley.
Yeah, and then it's
Paul Gilbert.
reverse Paul Gilbert's Fireman.
Yeah.
Did you see what he did there?
I did.
He turned an Iceman upside down
and called it a Fireman.
He wasn't the one that came up with the name. I shit you not. He turned an Iceman upside down and was going to call it the reverse Iceman. And he said someone told him.
Somebody at Ibanez was like, no, Fireman.
Paul, the opposite of ice is fire.
Yeah.
You're naming guitars, not your strong suit. Keep picking. Keep picking, buddy.
Well, I think maybe he wanted to call it the reverse Iceman to make sure the homage was still there, because he's a huge Kiss fan.
He really, yeah, dude. That's so the Iceman, that was so popular when they first came out. So popular. And
my first electric guitar that I owned was a Flying V.
What? I thought it was a Strat.
No, my first good electric guitar was a Strat.
Oh, okay.
But my very, very first electric guitar was a Flying V.
Interesting. So what are the
blue and I painted yellow and black Van Halen stripes on it.
Oh, neat.
It was
awesome.
Said
Van Halen. You said Van Halen, so it's approved. What are some other weird shaped guitar? Well, I don't know if I'd call it weird, but the teardrop shapes that the Beatles played.
Yeah, those Vox teardrops. You know, it's a weird shaped guitar. The Fender Meteora. Have you seen these?
Yes, I'm gonna go look them up right now. Like, we're gonna have to do me a favor, put a picture up.
Okay. Can you see it? Share. Here we go.
Oh,
so it's almost like to me, it looks like a modified Jazzmaster.
Okay, I could see that.
You know, it's got shorter horns. It's got shorter top horn, a pointier bottom horn, and a wider butt end. And that big swoopy pick guard that reminds me of a Telecaster Custom or Telecaster Deluxe.
Now, what are these pickups they're putting in there with they remind me of G&Ls a little, but those are
that's the Fender wide range humbucker that has the 2 offset screw coils. They call that the wide range humbucker.
Okay.
And it does not fit into a regular humbucker slot unless you specifically get one that is humbucker sized.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah. So that's a relatively new shape. I have yet to see a person playing one in person.
Incidentally, you mentioned the Jazzmaster. Have you seen the headstock on these? It does resemble the.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So maybe they identified that. All right. So weird shaped guitars. And then I think we have to take a minute and appreciate, since you mentioned them earlier, Kiesel, or is it Kiesel? Yeah.
Multi-skill. It depends on whether or not it's German. If it's German, it's Kiesel.
Okay.
K-E-I, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, then it's
K-I-E. K-I-E.
oh, then it's Kiesel.
Okay.
In German,
Multi-scale.
yeah. In German, when you have an I and an E
Um,
next to each other, you say the second one.
yeah. We mentioned fan frets earlier. So I think fan frets are multi-scale guitars.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I think we have to
Kiesel.
thank the metal industry
Yeah.
because that's who's primarily playing those things. And then the one last thing that I'm going to bring up is graphite nuts and graphite saddles, even. So
Yeah,
specifically, I'll
even
mention
I've had some guitars with graphite nuts and saddles.
Tusk is one of the bigger companies. Back in the
Yeah,
day, you couldn't get them on a guitar; you had to buy them. And now,
separately.
yeah, and now they're almost like they're not almost they're standard equipment on a lot of for a lot of guitars. Manufacturers are using them right out of the gate. So do they? And Tusk, the selling point with Tusk is we make slippery nuts and saddles that sound as good as bone. That was their selling point. They made good. It was bone without bone.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool.
So Kiesel makes multi-scale, offset, headless stainless steel fret guitars.
All of the and without active pickups.
Ooh, sorry. Big thump. I just hit my microphone. Yeah. If they put in, and then if you put active pickups in it, you've hit the guitar technology multifecta.
Exactly.
I didn't know that Kiesel had so many different models. That's kind of impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And only a couple of them are like traditional shapes. They got a single cutaway, like a Les Paul shape.
Yeah,
They got a
they're
Telecaster
super
shape.
leaning into that weird shaped guitar.
Yeah, they are. They have one Strat shape that's a custom, or that's a signature model. But they lots of super strats and lots of metal super strats. Alan
Excused.
Holdsworth, that's a weird Telly Red Beach headless.
They still make a Holdsworth model, huh?
Yeah, they got one that looks like a
That's a holdover from the
PRS.
Carvin days, dude.
It sure is. They got V's, and they got pointy, multi-pointed guitars.
Yeah, they ain't playing around with the weird shaped guitar stuff.
Yeah.
So
A
we've
lot
talked a
of
lot
weird stuff.
about ideas that didn't catch on, ideas that did catch on, and I think we are going to spend a couple minutes talking about the future. What's
Yeah,
coming?
what's the next thing in guitar technology? Well, 2 years ago, I wouldn't have said the next thing is a USB programmable or a Bluetooth programmable guitar switch,
Mm-mm.
pickup switch.
Nope.
But I know that Bluetooth and programmability is becoming a thing in pedals. So I
Mm-hmm.
think we're probably going to see a lot more of that, where you can Bluetooth your phone into your pedal or your amp and adjust settings on the fly.
There's tons of it now. I have 2 UA pedals that you can do that with.
There you go. All right. See, so I predicted the future without even knowing it. I've predicted the future, and the future is now.
Old man. The
Um,
future is now, old
so
man.
so then maybe what the next thing then is some kind of artificial intelligence that literally reads the room and adjusts your amp to compensate for the sonic characteristics of the room you're playing in real time.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
We're already seeing AI pretty much all over the plugin industry.
Yeah.
So we have my son and I both have like isotope plugins, multiple plugins using AI to like mix for you, to adjust your reverb. Um, and they're not the only plugins that are using AI right now, but there is for the first AI programmed, AI designed reverb pedal on the market by
Hey,
a
reverb
company.
pedals. There's another thing that we grabbed onto, right?
Mm-hmm.
Reverb went from massive studio only things to separate tube units to built into an amp to a tiny little pedal on your board.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And everybody, even I have a reverb pedal.
Mm-hmm. Me
And
too.
I'm old school. I much prefer my reissue tube reverb unit.
Excuse me. You need to be going down to Capitol Studios and doing all your reverb there.
That's right. On the big plate.
So yeah, there's a company called Fjord Fuzz.
Fjord Fuzz.
Fjord Fuzz. The
That's
pedal's
fun to
called
say.
Mime, M-I-M-E, and it is the first that I'm aware of AI designed reverb pedal. The
Huh.
pedal designed the code.
The computer designed the pedal.
The AI designed the pedal.
So yeah,
The
well,
algorithms.
is that the next thing then, AI designing music for us?
It
If
can.
AI can design pedals, they can design amps. If they can
Well,
design amps, they can make the music.
yeah, well, I was going to say, so here's how I've been using AI at work.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm a data analyst, but even aside from the data stuff, I have been using AI to draft emails and, like when I need to say something very specific in a very specific boilerplate way,
Okay.
I've been using it to help me draft emails, not my day to day stuff, but, certain emails. But from a coding perspective, as a data analyst, I work in, it's a coding environment. And sometimes I need some help.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways to slice an apple in the coding world, and sometimes I'm not sure what the best way is. So I have on some occasions fed the AI a piece of code and say, hey, optimize this, and it would optimize the code. And other times I just flat out said, I need code to do this. Here's what I'm trying to do in my data model. How do I do it? And it's like, here you go.
Huh.
No more Stack Overflow for me. To your point, if it can design an algorithm to produce reverb, why can't it do an algorithm to produce a distortion circuit?
Yeah. Or anything else.
And this is a true story.
This is how we get
Just
Skynet, Andrew.
just for fun, um, one of my old songs, I wanted to change up a chord pattern. So I said I wanted to. I gave it a prompt. Hey, here's a chord structure from an old song. Here's the chords. Mix it up for me, make it sound good. Gave me a different idea. It was okay. It wasn't great. I could have given another prompt that might have kept giving me some ideas, but
Yeah.
they were in key. It was
Yeah.
in the right key. And if I had another friend asked me for uh, they wanted to write a verse for a retirement party, and
Okay.
I said, tell it, just tell it a little bit about the person who's retiring and
Yeah.
ask it for a short poem, and it did that.
Write me lyrics in the style of Guns N' Roses about somebody retiring from their job.
Ooh, I'm going to do that as soon as we're done, and I want to see what it does.
It's
But
Sweet Child of
why
Mine.
do you
It's got to be
think?
Sweet Child of Mine.
Why do you think that? Oh, when the strike just ended, but the SAG after it. Why do you think the writers were on strike, fighting for their right to be,
It's a
not
party.
replaced by AI?
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
messed up. So I think AI is going to be the next big thing in the music industry.
Yeah. I wonder
Um,
how long that's going to take. Probably not as long as we are afraid it will.
by the time we're done this episode.
Yeah, this episode comes out and AI has already suppressed it.
Now, you mentioned something you wanted to talk about from a technology perspective, because I thought this was an interesting topic as far as the future.
Oh, is that the Tone Masters?
Yeah, because to be honest, it's almost like a step backward in some ways from
It kind of is.
like digital modeling that do like the do all models. Fender went in the other direction, like, nope.
Yeah. So
So
for people who don't know, the Fender Tone Master series of amplifiers are modeling amps, but they model one amp, right? So the Tone Master Twin Reverb costs half as much as a tube twin reverb. It also weighs half as much, I might add,
yeah,
right? 33 pounds compared to 64 pounds. 64 pounds for a tube Fender Twin Reverb.
no
Um,
thanks.
yeah, they're and I've played one of the Tone Master Twin Reverbs, and it sounds like every Twin Reverb I ever played.
Wow.
Now, have I had the opportunity to completely run them completely through their paces and run it at all different volumes with a bunch of different stuff? No, but for the 15-20 minutes that I was playing one, if I closed my eyes I was playing a twin reverb. And I
So
imagine in the context of a performance with a band, it would be even more so, because there are some intangibles that digital hasn't quite come up with, but they're becoming less and less important. And I love the idea of this. Vintage amps are expensive.
hard to find.
They're hard to find, they're hard to maintain, and you have to get somebody who really knows what they're doing to maintain them. I'm so lucky that I have an amp tech in my
Yeah.
city that I can rely on, and he's
I don't,
good.
yeah, I don't have that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, earlier when we were talking about these, I thought, I wonder who the market is. I'm starting to wonder if Fender isn't experimenting with coming up with a solution for, hey, what if we can't get tubes anymore?
Yeah.
Or what if no one wants tube amps anymore because they weigh so damn much and they're impossible to maintain?
Yeah.
What are we going to do? I mean, because I was thinking, why build a modeling amp that only models one amp? And I realized, what if you couldn't get tubes anymore? What would you do?
Yeah.
Well, if Mesa Boogie could not get tubes anymore, what would they do? Shutter? You just close shop?
Yeah.
Maybe what they would do is make the same amps, but make digital models of them and just make really, like, if your job is to make one model for an amp, not 30, you're going
Yeah.
to put all your time and attention into making that model the best it can be, right? Rather than spending all that time on 30 models and trying to make it a jack of all trades, you're going to make it a perfect replica of your dual rectifier or your single
Yeah.
rectifier, whatever.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
what Fender did is they made 4 or 5 as
Tone masters.
tone masters that are as perfect models, as perfect as they could get, I would guess.
Yeah. And
Maybe that's the world they're trying to, prepare for. Who knows?
yeah. Yeah. The one I want is the Tone Master Super Reverb. It's
Mhm.
got reverb and tremolo built in. It's a 410 combo. It weighs 36 pounds.
Oh my God, a 410, 36 pounds.
Yeah.
So they're neodymium speakers. Let's be clear. They're not even using like traditional speakers like Alnico
No.
or ceramic. They're using neodymium, which is fine.
Yeah.
Celestion
Well,
makes some neos now.
the Super Reverb actually has Alnico speakers. It has Jensen's in it.
It does.
Yeah, but the Twin
Four
Reverb has
tens.
the neodymium 410s, and the amp weighs 36 pounds.
A 30 of it has to be speaker.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
All right.
30 pounds in speakers, 4 pounds in cabinet in wood,
Yeah.
and
MDF or whatever.
2 pounds of amp. Yeah, I
That's
mean,
crazy, man.
yeah. And it looks, that's one of the great things I think about the Tone Master series is, except for the badge that says Tone Master in the bottom corner, they look like the right vintage amp,
They do, actually.
you know, until you flip them around and you look at the back and you're like, oh, yeah, that's not right at
There's a
all.
lot missing from
There's a
that.
lot missing, yeah, from back there.
Oh man.
It's
All
just
right.
it's something else. And I would like to see those become a thing. It would be an opportunity. Man, can you imagine if Marshall put out a modeled version of the JCM 800 that perfectly modeled the gain and master volume structure?
The JCM. I'd also like to see a JTM,
Yeah,
like an old Plexi,
that'd
like
be
a,
pretty awesome.
yep. I'd also like to see,
If the folks at Marshall are listening to this, there's your idea and you're welcome. I
yeah,
don't want to
stop.
get paid for it. Just send me one.
Right. So I think let's do a quick wrap up because we have to get to music that matters, which we know we're making a separate episode for those of you that aren't paying attention and don't listen as frequently as you should be. We separated music that matters from the main episode because apparently we can't keep our episodes short. So I want to do a quick wrap up. So I think we answered the question, do guitarists resist change? I think the answer is probably sometimes,
Yeah, I
right?
think I think I would say mostly. I would say at least 60-40.
Okay.
and maybe more. And I'll tell you why, because Fender just released the Vintera 2 line. It's a series of made in Mexico guitars. And I don't know if you've been watching the chatter on the forums, but people are really excited about them. And every single one of the goddamn things has a 7.25-inch fretboard radius.
Woo, love it.
Which I think
you don't.
is the dumbest thing they could have done.
Why?
Because they're impossible to play leads on.
Oh, who wants to play lead?
I do.
I don't want to play lead. I just want to kick back with my rhythm guitar. And
yeah, they're great for that.
Yeah.
I mean, the 7.25 radius is great for playing chords, especially cowboy chords.
So people are excited about these. Okay.
Yeah, people are really excited about them. I was really excited about them until I found out that every single one of the goddamn things has a 7.25-inch fretboard radius. Every single one. They didn't throw us a single bone at 9.5.
Every one of them, even all the Strats,
every
one of them.
Every single one, man.
Wow, it's like the one neck for all guitars.
It's like Fender hates me.
I don't hate you. I would gladly put a 9.5 on here for you. Why would they do that? That is weird. It's one thing to have like many of them, but all of them?
Yeah.
Couldn't they make one? Couldn't they make one person happy here?
Well, yeah, the people that think they like the 7.25-inch fretboard radius.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a shame.
It is.
So you think 60-40. I think, I think we are skeptical. I think we like to stick with what works. Yeah. I think, hey, if you're going to introduce something, do it right. And please don't make our guitars look like, aliens or robots from another planet, please.
Yeah.
And, I think the metal community is pushing the boundaries of change, to be honest. The rock and metal community are the ones pushing the boundaries. And I respect
bless
that.
them for it, man, because
absolutely.
It's like those technologies will eventually trickle down into more common practices.
Yep.
And I think all guitars will eventually benefit from some of these ideas.
I totally agree. I think that's a great point. Just like we've all benefited from what the porn industry has done for the internet.
Even if you don't watch porn.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
and so
like
maybe
Wes and I, we don't do that.
Never,
I'm just sure, right? Just saying, we don't do that.
But yeah, I mean, except for the eventual, Vintera 6 line, which will be all vintage specs, we may even see Fender embracing more of these changes across their lineup.
Well, hey, more stainless steel frets, Fender.
Yeah, you can't say I don't hammer something once I latch onto it.
You are nothing if not stubborn.
Yeah, there you go. That's all the words I could think of started with F.
A terrier. Persistent.
Is that a good place to wrap up?
I think so.
I think it's a good place to wrap up.
Listen, so differentstringspodcast.com. You can find us on the interwebs. Please leave us, if you're watching this on YouTube, please smash the like button, subscribe.
Smash it.
And leave us comments. Tell us about the changes that you either accepted or shunned, like the COVID, shunned like a virus.
Dropped like third period French. That's my favorite one of those I've ever heard. I'm going to drop you like third period French.
Oh, it's good. Tell us about your feelings on change. Do you resist change, or are you a Luddite, or are you someone that embraces change, or the opposite of a Luddite, which is a fire Luddite? No.
That was really well done.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. We'll see you next time, ladies and gentlemen, for episode 13. And thanks for joining us.
Peace.